Hello everyone, have a nice evening. Enjoy a good ghost story with the gentle sound of rain from BLACKRIDGE Stories, and sleep well. If you find these stories interesting, please subscribe and comment for me. Thank you very much everyone, and now, without making you wait any longer, let's go to part one of the story. The Ghost of the Soldier at Fort Wayne. Detroit's eternal sentinel, Fort Wayne, nestled along the banks of the Detroit River in Michigan, stands as a weathered monument to American military history. Built in the 1840s to guard against British invasion, the site never saw battle, yet its silence is anything but peaceful. Over the decades, soldiers came and went. Families lived within its walls. Prisoners of war were held behind its iron gates. Now, long after its last active use, many claim that Fort Wayne has not been left entirely unguarded, that a ghostly soldier still patrols the grounds. Those who visit Fort Wayne today encounter more than just the crumbling red brick walls, dusty barracks, and eerie tunnels. A cold presence often lingers, particularly near the officer quarters and around the parade ground. Some say it is simply the weight of history that presses on your chest when you step inside. Others insist it is something else, a restless soul who has refused to leave. It began with whispers, subtle and easy to dismiss. Maintenance workers and volunteers who helped preserve the site would sometimes hear footsteps echoing through empty corridors. At first, they assumed it was the creaking of old wood or distant sounds from nearby traffic. But as the reports grew more specific, footsteps pacing, a low male voice calling out names, the sound of a rifle being shouldered, skepticism started to fade. Security guards were among the first to speak openly. One guard, a retired Marine named Tom, recounted an experience he had one October night. I was doing my rounds near the old barracks, just after midnight. Everything was quiet, until I heard footsteps. Not mine, someone else. Heavy, deliberate. I called out. Thought maybe a visitor had stayed behind. No response. I rounded the corner, and that's when I saw him. Tom described a man in an old army uniform, standing at attention beside the flagpole. He looked real. I thought he was one of those reenactors who had gotten locked in, but when I stepped forward, he turned and vanished right in front of me. After that, more stories began surfacing. A group of paranormal investigators recorded sudden drops in temperature and unexplained electromagnetic fluctuations in the officers' quarters. One member captured audio of what seemed to be a whispered phrase, "Hold the line." Visitors during public tours also reported strange sensations. A woman from Ohio, exploring the site with her son, felt a hand brush her shoulder while standing alone in a hallway. Her son claimed to have seen a man in uniform behind her in the reflection of a dusty window, though no one else was there. According to local legend, the ghost is believed to be a Civil War soldier stationed at Fort Wayne in the 1860s. While Detroit was far from the front lines, the fort housed troops and was used as a training ground. Records mention a young soldier, Private Elias Turner, who died of pneumonia in 1863 after refusing to leave his post during a brutal winter night. He said he would never abandon his duty. One officer's letter noted, even as the fever burned through him. Some believe it is Elias who remains, a soldier so loyal to his command that not even death could convince him to step down. Reenactors who stay overnight during living history events have mentioned hearing someone issuing orders late at night, though no one else is awake. Others report hearing taps, the military bugle call played at funerals when no one nearby has a trumpet. One chilling incident involved a group of teens who snuck onto the grounds after dark, hoping to film a ghost hunting video for their YouTube channel. They entered one of the tunnels near the riverbank, filming and joking, until their flashlight began to flicker. Then they all heard it, the unmistakable sound of boots walking behind them. They turned, saw no one, and bolted. In the footage they later reviewed, a faint silhouette appears in the background, standing just at the edge of their light. Despite these frightening accounts, many describe the spirit not as malevolent, but watchful. A guard, a sentinel, a soldier performing his duty. Some staff even greet him when they begin their rounds, a quiet nod of respect to the past. Fort Wayne now serves as both a historical landmark and a quiet sanctuary. Community groups use it for educational programs, reenactments, and preservation efforts. Yet those who know the fort well leave a bit of space for the unknown. They speak of the ghost of Fort Wayne with reverence, not fear. They say that late at night, if you walk along the river wall or stand beneath the stars near the old parade grounds, you might hear him, the footsteps, the whispered name, the rustle of a uniform caught in a breeze that doesn't exist. Perhaps it's just the imagination playing tricks, or perhaps some duties are so sacred that even death cannot release them. Whatever the truth may be, Fort Wayne endures, a place where history refuses to rest, and where one soldier, faithful beyond the grave, still stands watch. Let's move on to part 2 of the story. The haunted old house in Saginaw echoes from the 19th century. In the quiet streets of Saginaw, Michigan, nestled between modern houses and aging trees, there stands an old Victorian house that time seems to have forgotten. Weather-worn and stoic, its darkened windows watch the road like tired eyes. To most passers-by, it's just another relic of the 1800s. But to those who've dared step inside, there's something far more disturbing. A place where history lingers not just in faded wallpaper, but in the restless souls who refuse to leave. Built in 1879, the house was once a symbol of prestige. Its original owner, a successful lumber baron named Charles Whitlock, spared no expense. Ornate woodwork, stained glass, and imported furnishings filled the halls. But wealth did not guard the Whitlock family from tragedy. By 1895, the house had become the site of multiple deaths. A child lost to scarlet fever, a wife found lifeless at the foot of the grand staircase, and Charles himself, who allegedly took his own life in the attic after financial ruin and rumors of betrayal. After that, the house changed hands several times, often sold at suspiciously low prices. Tenants rarely stayed long. Neighbors whispered of strange happenings, flickering lights when the power was off, windows opening on still nights, and the sound of a woman crying long after the house was empty. It wasn't until the 1970s that the house truly gained its reputation. A young couple, John and Marla Summers, moved in with hopes of restoring it. Marla was a painter, drawn to the home's decaying beauty. John, a schoolteacher, believed the rumors were just stories to scare children. But within weeks, both began to experience things they couldn't explain. Marla was the first to hear the knocking. It came late at night, soft at first, then louder, always 3 distinct knocks. At first, she thought it was the pipes. But when John heard it too, coming from the door of a room that had long been nailed shut, they began to question their assumptions. One evening, John was reading in the study when he heard footsteps above him. Thinking Marla was in the attic, he called up to her. No answer. The footsteps continued. When he finally climbed the narrow staircase, flashlight in hand, he found the attic empty. The dust was undisturbed, but the old rocking chair in the corner was swaying gently, as though someone had just stood up from it. Marla's paintings began to change. She often painted dreamscapes, forests, lakes, foggy skies. But now, dark figures began appearing in the corners of her canvases, always shadowed, always watching. She claimed she didn't remember adding them, but they appeared in nearly every painting. One, which she refused to complete, showed the grand staircase with a woman standing at the top, her face a blur, her dress soaked in what looked like blood. Visitors to the house, particularly those unfamiliar with its history, often left feeling nauseous or dizzy. Some said they heard voices whispering their names. One friend, a skeptic, laughed off the ghost stories until she entered the second-floor guest room. She claimed she suddenly felt cold, like ice was running through her veins. She turned to leave and saw, just for a moment, a little boy standing by the window. He was gone before she could speak. Eventually, the Summers moved out. Marla refused to take her paintings with her, calling them tainted. The house sat empty for years, a for sale sign fading under the sun. Today, the house still stands. Local ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts occasionally receive permission to investigate, and what they've found only adds to the mystery. Recordings capture faint sobbing, and devices used to measure electromagnetic fields often spike near the attic and staircase. Some visitors report a strong scent of roses, the favorite flower of Charles Whitlock's wife, even though no flowers grow nearby. A well-known paranormal team spent a night in the house in 2016. During their session in the attic, they captured audio of what sounded like a man's voice repeating the word guilt. That same night, one of the team members suffered a sudden panic attack and refused to re-enter the house. He later described a sensation of being watched by someone who hated me. The city of Saginaw has left the house untouched, perhaps out of respect, or perhaps out of fear. Locals know better than to linger near it after dark. Children dare each other to knock on the front door, but few are brave enough to wait for a response. And yet, every so often, someone passes by and notices a curtain move, or hears footsteps on the porch when no one is there. Some say they see a woman standing at the window, her face pale, her eyes empty. Others hear a soft knocking sound, 3 knocks, always in a row, coming from inside the walls. The house on Elmhurst Street is more than a relic. It is a wound in time that never fully healed. A place where echoes speak louder than words, and where sorrow takes shape in shadows. Maybe the Whitlock family never truly left. Maybe the house remembers every scream, every tear, every drop of blood. Or maybe the tragedies born within its walls created something darker, a presence that feeds on grief and regret. Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain. If you step through the threshold of the old house in Saginaw, you won't walk alone. Let's move on to part 3 of the story, the spirit of the miner. Hauntings beneath the Keweenaw Peninsula. The Keweenaw Peninsula, jetting out into the cold, restless waters of Lake Superior, is a land steeped in rugged beauty and hard-earned history, known for its rich copper deposits. It became the heart of Michigan's copper mining boom in the 19th and early 20th centuries. Generations of miners descended into its earth, chasing the promise of wealth buried deep in the rock. But beneath the ground, danger lurked in every shadowed tunnel and crumbling shaft. Many never returned. Some say they never really left. Today, the remnants of the old copper industry scatter the landscape, rusting head frames, collapsing mine entrances, and abandoned equipment overtaken by forest and moss. But beneath the soil lies something deeper than just forgotten tools and ore. Locals whisper that the spirits of the miners who died in the darkness now haunt the tunnels they once worked, forever bound to the earth they gave their lives to. One of the most notorious sites is the Quincy mine near Hancock. Built in the 1840s, it earned the nickname Old Reliable for its high output, but reliability came at a cost. Cave-ins, explosions, and gas leaks claimed hundreds of lives over the decades. Records from the time are vague, perhaps deliberately, but old newspapers tell grim stories of entire shifts vanishing into the rock, of bodies never recovered, and of weeping families waiting in vain outside the shaft entrance. It is in these places, where the past is layered thick and the air is unnaturally still, that visitors claim to encounter the inexplicable. Tour guides leading excursions into the old Quincy mine often report odd sensations, sudden chills, the smell of burning oil, and a strange pressure in the ears, like the weight of the earth itself is watching. The most commonly reported sound? The rhythmic clang of pickaxes on stone. Though no mining has occurred here for over a century, one guide, a local woman named Ellie, has worked the tours for 5 years. She tells a story that still unnerves her. It was a quiet day midweek, she recalls. I had a group of 5. We were walking through tunnel number 3 when everyone stopped, all at once. They heard it too. That tapping sound, like metal on rock. It started soft, then got louder. Echoes from deep inside, where we weren't supposed to go. Thinking perhaps another group had wandered off path, Ellie called out. No answer. One of the tourists, a man in his 60s, suddenly gasped and pointed toward a side passage, long sealed off. There, he whispered. Someone's standing in there. Ellie turned and saw nothing but shadows. Still, tapping stopped. The air seemed to thicken, heavy with old grief. When they returned to the surface, the man showed Ellie a photo he'd taken during the noise. In the grainy image, just at the edge of the blocked passage, a figure stood, helmeted, hunched, eyes glowing faintly. A miner. This wasn't the first time such a figure had appeared. Security cameras installed for safety frequently pick up unexplained shapes moving through sealed shafts. Volunteers restoring the old machinery have heard coughing, breathing, and even shouts in Finnish, a language once common among immigrant miners, despite no one else being nearby. There are older stories too. In the town of Calumet, just south of the Quincy mine, locals speak of a particular stormy night in 1911 when a collapse trapped 17 men underground. Only 6 were rescued. The others suffocated slowly as the hours passed. Since then, during thunderstorms, people walking near the site claimed to hear desperate cries and pounding fists from beneath the ground. A retired miner named Yuka, now in his 80s, swears he once saw a full line of spectral workers emerging from an old shaft entrance at dusk. They walked past me like I wasn't there, he said. Helmets, lamps, gear and all, but no sound of footsteps, just the wind. They turned toward the tree lane and vanished. More recently, campers near the Delaware mine ruins have reported hearing strange mechanical sounds at night, grinding gears, distant explosions, the rhythmic creak of war carts. When they investigate, they find nothing but collapsed tunnels and rusted rails. One man, who stayed overnight for a photography project, fled the site after waking to see a dusty helmet resting beside his sleeping bag. He had been alone. Despite these terrifying reports, many locals view the ghosts of the miners with a kind of reverence. They're not evil, says Ellie. They're just stuck. They died working for something they believed in, to feed their families, to build a future. The mines betrayed them. Now they linger. Some say the spirits are warning signs, urging people to remember the lives that were lost in pursuit of profit. Others believe the land itself holds a grudge, not against the miners, but against those who exploited them. In either case, the Keweenaw Peninsula holds its secrets tightly. Today, the region is popular with hikers, historians, and ghost hunters. Some come for the legends, others come for the thrill. All leave with the same unease, that something ancient and grieving still stirs beneath the surface. If you ever visit and find yourself walking near one of the old mine shafts at night, and you hear the distant clang of metal on rock, don't be alarmed. But don't answer it either, for the miner who makes that sound may not be looking for help, only a way back home. Let's get to part 4 of the story. The Phantom of the Detroit Opera House echoes from the stage amid the towering architecture of downtown Detroit. The Detroit Opera House stands as a symbol of elegance, performance, and history. Its ornate chandeliers, grand staircases, and velvet seats have hosted generations of artists, musicians, and theatergoers. But beneath the glamour lies a darker tale, one of tragic deaths, strange echoes, and spirits that refuse to leave the stage. Completed in 1922, the Opera House has seen multiple restorations and revivals, surviving economic downturns and near demolition. Yet no amount of reconstruction could cleanse what some believe are the building's oldest and most persistent residents, the ghosts of performers and crew members whose lives ended behind the curtains. For nearly a century, whispered rumors have circled among staff and cast members. Stories of unexplained footsteps echoing through empty corridors, lights flickering moments before a performance, a cold breeze blowing backstage when no door is open. Many dismiss these occurrences as theater superstition, a kind of nervous energy inherent to old buildings filled with passionate people. But for those who've spent enough time in the Opera House after dark, the line between superstition and the supernatural blurs. One of the most well-known spirits is believed to be that of an actress who died tragically in the 1940s. Her name was Elise Fontaine, a rising soprano with a voice said to melt the hardest hearts. During a dress rehearsal for La Traviata, a malfunction caused one of the heavy chandeliers above the stage to collapse. Elise, standing center stage, was crushed instantly. Her death sent shockwaves through Detroit's performing arts community. Ever since, performers have reported seeing a woman in a long, period-style gown drifting silently near the wings or sitting quietly in one of the balcony seats. She never speaks. She never blinks. She simply watches, as if waiting for her next cue. A stagehand named Marcus, who's worked the Opera House for over 20 years, recounts an unsettling encounter. It was late, he said, past midnight. We just finished striking the set, and I was locking up. That's when I saw her, standing in the center of the stage, in a white dress. I thought maybe it was a performer who got left behind, but as I approached, she turned and faded into the curtains. And the weirdest thing, the stage lights came on by themselves, full spotlight, like someone cued them from the control room. But no one was there. Security footage later confirmed that no one had entered or exited the control booth during that time. Another commonly reported phenomenon is the sound of piano music floating through the halls, soft, melancholic, and unmistakably live. But when staff search for the source, the music stops. No one is seated at the grand piano in the rehearsal room. No musician is logged in, just silence and the faint smell of dust and roses. Technicians also speak of equipment failures that defy explanation. Microphones crackle with phantom static. Headsets pick up breathing and whispered phrases in languages no one recognizes. Lights blow out in sequence, as though following invisible footsteps. During one memorable performance, the main curtain lifted and dropped on its own, interrupting the scene mid-act. The crew later discovered that the rigging ropes had been securely tied. No chance of accidental slippage. Visitors on guided tours have felt unseen hands brush past their arms or tug at their coats. One tourist fainted near the orchestra pit after claiming to see a man in a tuxedo glaring at her from the shadows. When she came to, she described the man in great detail. A man who, according to historical photos, resembled a former conductor who died of a heart attack in the Opera House in 1935. Over the years, paranormal investigators have been drawn to the Detroit Opera House, each eager to document its mysteries. Many leave with more questions than answers. Recordings taken overnight have picked up voices singing short arias in empty rooms. Others contain sobs, gasps, and whispered pleas, the kind that crawl under your skin. Despite these chilling stories, those who work at the Opera House don't speak of the spirits with fear, but rather respect. This place has a soul, says Lucille, a costume designer, a living energy. Every thread, every floorboard, every light bulb carries memory. I think some of them loved it here so much, they just stayed. Some even claim the spirits are protective. In 2010, a fire threatened the storage wing of the building. Sprinklers failed to activate, but somehow, the blaze extinguished before it could spread. Investigators couldn't determine what caused the fire to die out. No fire suppression system had kicked in, and no water lines were engaged. One firefighter on the scene later admitted, "It felt like the building itself was fighting back, like someone or something didn't want it to burn." Whether guardian or ghost, something lingers in the Detroit Opera House, an energy both mournful and mesmerizing. Those who return night after night, season after season, learn to work alongside the unseen, to bow, to perform, and perhaps to share the spotlight with the past. So, if you ever attend a show there and feel a chill run down your spine, or notice a figure in a seat that should be empty, don't worry. They're just another fan of the opera. Let's come to part 5 of the story, the haunted village of Mackinac Island. Whispers from the fog. Mackinac Island, perched like a forgotten relic in Lake Huron between Michigan's upper and lower peninsulas, is known for its natural beauty, horse-drawn carriages, and ban on motor vehicles. But behind the island's quaint charm and historic facades lies something much older, much colder. The stories passed down by locals and visitors alike speak of spirits that never left, of voices in the fog, and of footsteps echoing through empty streets after midnight. The island was once home to the Anishinaabe people, whose spiritual connection to the land shaped its earliest stories. Long before colonists arrived, the native tribes believed Mackinac Island to be a sacred place, the place of the Great Turtle. It was thought to be the site where spirits crossed into the next world, a kind of gateway between realms, and even now, some believe that gateway never fully closed. When the French and British colonists arrived in the 17th and 18th centuries, they built forts, trading posts, and later, luxury hotels for the elite. But they also brought disease, war, and death. The island saw skirmishes during the War of 1812, and countless unnamed graves remain buried beneath its scenic trails. All of this, generations of reverence, violence, and unresolved death, has soaked into the soil. The Grand Hotel, towering white and opulent above the island's shoreline, is one of the main sources of ghost stories. Built in 1887, it has hosted presidents, dignitaries, and movie stars. But according to guests and staff, it also hosts something else. Visitors often report hearing heavy footsteps pacing in hallways during the night, only to open their doors and find nothing. Some have seen a man in a top hat and tails standing silently near the staircase, only to have him vanish before their eyes. One honeymooning couple awoke to the sound of furniture scraping across the floor. When they turned on the lights, the armchair was facing the bed, as though someone, or something, had been watching them sleep. A longtime hotel employee, Clara, recalled an incident from the early 2000s. "I was setting up one of the ballrooms before an event," she said, "when I felt a hand rest lightly on my shoulder. I turned around and no one was there, but I could still feel the pressure, as if someone were standing behind me, breathing." Clara now refuses to work alone after dark, but the Grand Hotel isn't the only location touched by the supernatural. Walk along the island's winding roads after sunset, and you may find yourself followed, not by people, but by shadows. Tourists have reported seeing figures dart between the trees along the Arch Rock Trail. Others have caught glimpses of a woman in 1800s clothing drifting near the cemetery, her dress billowing as if blown by an unseen wind, her face always obscured. Then there are the bicycles. Since cars are banned on Mackinac, bicycles are the main mode of transportation, but not all of them are manned by the living. A local bike rental owner, Greg, told the story of a rental that was returned late one evening, except it hadn't been rented at all that day. The chain was oiled, tires scuffed with fresh dirt, but it was signed out to no one. No ID, no charge, nothing. We reviewed the CCTV footage. It showed a bike rolling into the lot and parking itself. No rider, just rolling on its own. Near the harbor, the former mission house, once a school and then a boarding house, is another site of activity. Lights turn on and off by themselves, windows slam shut, and laughter is often heard echoing from empty rooms. A group of paranormal investigators once stayed overnight. Their equipment captured audio clips of whispered voices in languages they couldn't identify, and thermal imaging picked up cold spots shaped like human figures standing in doorways. But perhaps the most chilling stories come not from buildings, but from the land itself. Some hikers exploring the island's wooded interior have become disoriented, walking in circles for hours even with maps and GPS. One couple said they kept returning to the same tree, which they swear had symbols carved into its bark, symbols that vanished when they returned the next morning with a park ranger. Locals have a name for this phenomenon, the pull. They say it's the island calling you deeper, testing whether you belong or whether you'll become one of its lost souls. A fog often rolls in off the water at dusk, thick, blinding, and eerily silent. Many believe this is when the spirits are most active. One tourist described walking through the haze and seeing an entire group of people in period clothing having a picnic on the lawn. He waved. They didn't react. Moments later, the fog cleared and the lawn was empty. Others have taken photographs that reveal strange blurs or transparent figures standing beside them. Figures that weren't there when the picture was taken. Some show glowing eyes or spectral faces in upper-story windows of shuttered buildings. Even the island's horses seem to sense something. Guides recount instances of their animals refusing to go down certain roads after dark, digging in their hooves or nervously snorting until their handlers lead them elsewhere. One path near the old British landing site is particularly avoided, where legend says a group of soldiers was ambushed and buried in an unmarked grave. Today, that path is shaded, silent, and always several degrees colder than the surrounding woods. Despite the unsettling stories, Mackinac Island continues to draw visitors from around the world. Some come for the beauty. Others come hoping to experience the mystery themselves. But whether you believe in ghosts or not, one thing is clear. This island holds memories, deep ones, some joyful, some violent, and some so unresolved, they echo still in the night air. So the next time you find yourself strolling through Mackinac after sunset, and you hear soft footsteps behind you, don't be too quick to look over your shoulder, because here, the dead walk softly, and they're not ready to leave. Let's come to part 6 of the story. The spirit of the woman at the Whitney echoes in the grand staircase. The Whitney stands as a towering monument to Detroit's Gilded Age, a majestic Romanesque mansion of pink granite and lavish woodwork. Built in 1894 by lumber baron David Whitney Jr., but behind its ornate beauty and impeccable dining rooms lies a story rarely told aloud. A story whispered by staff after closing, passed quietly between guests who feel something they cannot explain. It's the story of a woman who never left. The Whitney is now a celebrated fine dining restaurant and historic landmark. Thousands of visitors flock to admire its stained glass windows and hand-carved fireplaces. But many of them come away with more than just memories of a fine meal. They come away with chills, with inexplicable photos, and with questions that only deepen after dark. In the early 1900s, shortly after the Whitney family moved into the residence, tragedy struck. According to local lore, a woman, believed to be a distant relative or possibly a housemaid, fell down the grand staircase under mysterious circumstances. Her neck broke instantly. Some claimed she slipped. Others whispered she was pushed. But no one ever truly knew what happened that night, only that the house changed after her death. Staff began reporting cold drafts in sealed rooms. Doors would close on their own, and chandeliers swayed as if brushed by unseen hands. At first, these were dismissed as the creaks and groans of an old house settling, but the events grew bolder. Today, employees speak of her with cautious respect. They refer to her not by name, because no one knows it, but simply as the woman. She's seen most often on the second floor, near the landing of the grand staircase, where she died. One server, Maria, had her first encounter during a slow weekday shift. She was walking up the staircase to deliver wine to the private dining room when she felt her dress tugged. Lightly at first, then with enough force to make her stumble. Turning quickly, she saw nothing behind her, but when she looked ahead again, a figure stood at the top of the stairs. A woman in early 20th century clothing, translucent, her eyes full of sorrow. And then she vanished. Guests have had similar experiences. A couple celebrating their anniversary requested to change tables after the wife reported feeling watched from the corner of the room. She described a pale woman standing near the fireplace, hands clasped, expression mournful. She didn't blink, the woman said. She just stood there, as if waiting for something. Others have captured her image. One photograph taken during a wedding reception shows a faint silhouette in the upstairs mirror, a woman's face, partially obscured by a lace veil, though no one at the party wore such a thing. Another visitor, exploring the powder room on the second floor, snapped a selfie and later noticed a hand on her shoulder in the reflection, though she had been completely alone. Perhaps the most unsettling stories come from those who venture to the basement. The basement of the Whitney, now used for storage and staff breaks, carries a different kind of cold, not just temperature, but a heavy, watching stillness. A former chef once went downstairs for supplies and returned pale and shaking. There was a woman in the far corner, he whispered. She was standing in the shadows, and I could hear her breathing, but when I turned on the lights, she was gone. Some say the spirit moves between floors, her sorrow tethered to the staircase that claimed her life. Others believe she's searching for something, maybe her name, maybe justice, or maybe simply peace. On several occasions, guests have reported hearing a soft lullaby humming from the hallway, usually when the dining rooms are empty. One child visiting with her family said she followed the sound and found a woman in a gray dress who smiled and said, "You shouldn't be here after dark." When the child turned to get her parents, the woman had disappeared. There are nights, especially near the anniversary of her death, believed to be sometime in November, when the atmosphere shifts noticeably. The air grows dense, Glasses clink softly without reason. Electronics flicker. One night, a security guard doing a late walkthrough swore he saw her walking down the stairs, one hand gently tracing the banister. He didn't follow. He simply locked up and left. Even skeptics admit something about the Whitney is different. Paranormal investigators have visited the mansion several times. Using EMF meters, thermal cameras, and EVP recorders, they've captured odd fluctuations, cold spots, and faint voices. In one recording, a whisper clearly says, "Please help me." In another, the name Clara is barely audible, a name not found in any records, but now used affectionately by staff when referring to the ghost. But who was she? That remains the mystery. Some theorize she was a housemaid, perhaps involved in a scandal. Others believe she was a cousin or distant niece who died tragically and was quietly buried to avoid family shame. Without a name, there's no tombstone, no closure, only the lingering presence of a woman frozen in time. The Whitney has embraced its haunted history with quiet dignity, though it doesn't market itself as a haunted attraction. Those who work within its walls understand the importance of respect. The spirit is not malicious, but sorrowful, sensitive, and very, very real to those who've encountered her. So if you ever dine at the Whitney, take a moment as you walk up the grand staircase. Look carefully into the mirrors. Feel the air as it shifts around you. And listen, truly listen, because sometimes the past isn't finished speaking. Sometimes it's still climbing the stairs beside you. Let's come to part 7 of the story, the ghost train of Detroit, whispers on the tracks. In the heart of Detroit's decaying rail yards and forgotten industrial corridors lies a chilling tale that few dare to speak aloud. It's a story not written in books or featured in city brochures, but whispered among train conductors, security guards, and old-timers who remember when the tracks still breathed with life. It's the story of a train that never stopped, a ghostly locomotive that roams the night long after its passengers have disappeared. The legend dates back to the 1940s, when Detroit's economy was booming, and the railways ran through the heart of the city like arteries of steel. One train in particular, a late-night freight and passenger hybrid dubbed Line 347, ran from Chicago to Detroit every evening, often arriving near midnight. On one stormy November night, tragedy struck. A bridge, weakened by weeks of rain and structural neglect, gave way just as the train crossed the Detroit River's industrial branch. The entire locomotive and several cars plunged into the dark waters below. It took weeks to recover the bodies. Some were never found. The wreckage was hauled out in pieces, and the track was abandoned. A quiet memorial was erected, then slowly forgotten as the decades passed. The tracks rusted, the station closed, and the whispers began. It started with late-night workers in nearby factories, men who claimed they heard the screech of wheels and the mournful sound of a train whistle where there were no trains. Security guards patrolling the old depots would report hearing footsteps echoing across platforms, accompanied by a low metallic rumble in the distance. But no train ever came. Then came the sightings. Drivers passing the stretch of unused track near the old depot on Michigan Avenue began reporting strange encounters. A few minutes before midnight, they'd see headlights down the line, accompanied by the unmistakable clatter of iron wheels on rail. Some claimed they saw the full outline of the train, dark, aged, its paint peeled and windows fogged. But most chilling of all was its silence. No conductor, no passengers, no sound of engines, just a moving shadow of what once was. One woman, a nurse returning from a late shift at Henry Ford Hospital, described seeing the train glide across the road ahead of her as if it were on invisible rails. She braked in shock, heart pounding, as the full locomotive passed right through a chain-link fence without disturbing a single strand. Then it disappeared into the mist. "I could see into the windows," she later said. There were people inside, but they didn't move, just sat still, staring straight ahead like mannequins. Paranormal investigators who visited the site recorded strange electromagnetic activity around the abandoned stretch. Their cameras caught flashes of light, and in one audio recording, a faint voice whispered, "We're still en route." Some theorize that the spirits of the lost passengers are trapped in a loop, doomed to ride the rails forever. Others believe the tragedy created a temporal scar, an echo of the moment before the crash repeating eternally. Whatever the cause, the train seems to follow its original schedule. Most reports place its appearance at exactly 11:47 p.m., the same time the crash occurred decades ago. In 2003, a retired train engineer named Howard Greer came forward with his own chilling account. While driving home one night near the site, he saw the train emerge from behind an overpass. No tracks, no sound, just the full outline of an old locomotive gliding forward. His headlights passed through it as though it were smoke. "But I swear," he said, "I saw the number plate. 347, it was my old route." Howard had driven that exact line 30 years before. He'd left the job after witnessing what he believed to be a ghostly apparition on the tracks. A man in a conductor's uniform waving a lantern, only to vanish into thin air. Many Detroit locals now avoid that section of road after dark. Even Uber drivers have shared stories of cold zones where their GPS glitches and the temperature drops inside their vehicles as they near the tracks. One dashcam even captured what appeared to be a faint outline of a train's headlight passing directly through a concrete barrier. But it's not just sightings. Some claim to have heard voices. A man walking his dog late one night near the overgrown railway corridor said he heard the hiss of steam and the soft murmur of people conversing. As he turned to look, his dog froze, growling at empty space. Then came the unmistakable clang of a conductor's bell. Once, twice, 3 times, and then nothing. Another witness, a high school student recording a late-night urban exploration video for YouTube, caught something deeply unsettling. As he filmed himself walking near the old depot, a sudden gust of wind kicked up, and a woman's voice could be heard faintly on the microphone. "Don't get on. Not again." Viewers who examined the video frame by frame pointed out what looked like a figure in an old train uniform standing on a distant platform, watching the boys silently. Detroit has many ghosts. From forgotten theaters to crumbling factories, the city carries its past like a second skin. But the ghost train of Detroit may be the most active and the most relentless. It doesn't just haunt a building, it moves, it roams, it searches. Why it appears only to some and not to others remains a mystery. Perhaps those who see it are sensitive to the echoes of time. Or maybe the spirits aboard are still waiting for their final stop, unable to rest until someone remembers them. So if you find yourself near the old Michigan Central Station or driving along the empty stretch of road that parallels the long-dead rail line, keep your eyes on the night. Listen closely for the whistle no longer blown by any living engineer, because at 11:47 p.m., when the wind is right and the air goes still, you might just see it. And if you do, don't follow it. Some passengers are never meant to return. Let's come to part 8 of the story, the sailor's ghost of Grand Haven Lighthouse, where the waves whisper the dead, on the quiet shores of Lake Michigan, where the wind howls with icy breath and the waves crash endlessly against rock and steel, stands the Grand Haven Lighthouse, a crimson structure jetting defiantly into the water. It has weathered over a century of storms. But even time cannot wash away the secrets it keeps, for beneath its stoic exterior and picturesque beauty lies a darker truth, spoken only in hushed tones by locals and lighthouse keepers past. They say a ghost walks these shores, drenched in water, cloaked in fog, and forever searching for a ship that will never return. The legend begins in the early 1900s, a time when the Great Lakes were a treacherous path for shipping routes. Harsh winters often froze parts of the water solid. Blizzards could appear without warning, swallowing entire vessels into the lake's icy depths. One such storm came in December of 1919, a particularly cruel winter with gale-force winds and freezing temperatures that turned the water into black glass and snow into razors. The SS Morro Bay, a cargo vessel delivering coal from Milwaukee, attempted to reach the harbor at Grand Haven during a snowstorm that lasted 3 days. Blinded by sleet and betrayed by their faulty navigation equipment, the ship's captain tried to guide the vessel between the protective arms of the harbor piers, but the lake was merciless. As it neared the lighthouse, a rogue wave struck, tilting the ship and tearing its hull on a hidden rock. The vessel capsized within minutes. The crew scrambled for safety, but only a few made it to the icy shoreline. Others were swallowed by the lake, their final cries drowned by the storm. One sailor, a young deckhand named Thomas Everly, was last seen clinging to a life buoy, drifting toward the lighthouse. Witnesses said he was shouting for help, eyes wide with terror. Then, just as the light from the tower swung across the water, he vanished beneath the waves. His body was never recovered. Weeks passed. The lake calmed. The wreckage of the Morro Bay was discovered, and the survivors buried their dead. But the lighthouse never truly returned to silence. It began with footsteps, wet, heavy boots echoing in the steel corridors of the lighthouse tower during the dead of night. The keeper at the time, a man named George Holbrook, reported hearing knocks at the door just before midnight. Each time he opened it, no one was there. The air, however, was always damp, and once, on Christmas Eve, he found a trail of wet footprints leading from the door to the spiral staircase and stopping at the railing overlooking the lake. George left his post the following spring, refusing to return. In his journal, he wrote only, "He's still out there, and he's still cold." In the years that followed, visitors and locals alike shared their own sightings. Most often, they spoke of a man standing at the end of the pier during snowstorms, barely visible through the mist. He wore an old sailor's coat, his cap pulled low over his face. Some say he held a lantern, swinging it slowly, as if trying to signal an invisible ship. When approached, he would fade into the snow, leaving only the sound of water dripping and a deep chill in the air. A couple visiting the lighthouse in 1982 claimed they saw a man pacing the edge of the walkway on a bitter February night. He looked lost, the woman said. We called out to him, thinking he might need help. But when we got closer, he turned to face us, and there was nothing there, just mist. Paranormal investigators have since flocked to the site, many bringing thermal cameras and EVP recorders. Some captured unexplained cold spots in the tower. Others recorded audio with strange tapping noises and a voice repeating the word overboard. One team reported that their compass spun wildly whenever pointed toward the lake during winter months. But the most unnerving stories come from lighthouse volunteers and staff. One keeper, stationed for a night tour in 2015, claimed he was awakened by a banging sound on the lower deck. Thinking a visitor had stayed behind, he rushed down, only to find the door swinging open and snow drifting in. As he stepped outside, he saw footprints, wet, bare, leading straight to the edge of the icy lake. The Grand Haven Lighthouse has become a beloved landmark, attracting tourists with its beauty and history, but those who know its story treat it with quiet reverence. Some say you should never whistle as you walk the pier after dark. It's believed to call to the dead. Others leave a candle by the shore every December 19th, the date of the Morro Bay's sinking, in honor of the lost souls who never made it home. And every winter, when the air turns sharp and the sky is heavy with snow, the lighthouse's beam cuts across the water with ghostly determination. Locals who walk the beach during these months often pause at the sound of a distant bell, one not attached to any ship still sailing. They say it's Thomas, still clinging to that life buoy, still searching for land, still knocking at the door, hoping someone will finally guide him home. So, if you find yourself visiting Grand Haven in winter, take a moment to stand in silence by the lighthouse, listen to the wind, watch the waves, and if you feel a sudden chill or see a figure at the edge of the pier, don't be afraid. He doesn't mean harm. He's just lost, adrift between this world and the next, carried on the cold breath of the lake, forever a part of the storm. Let's come to part 9 of the story, The Ghosts of Belle Isle. Whispers beneath the willows, on the edge of the Detroit River, nestled between the shores of Michigan and Ontario, lies Belle Isle Park, a stretch of green serenity with willow trees that bow toward glimmering water and trails that wind through centuries of memory. But beneath its tranquil beauty lies a history soaked in sorrow and mystery for those who dare to walk the park at twilight, especially near the lake's edge. Whispers ride the wind. Some say they've seen figures by the water, They're one moment, gone the next. Belle Isle, for all its charm, holds a darker story beneath the leaves. Locals call it Detroit's most haunted park, and with good reason. Over the decades, Belle Isle has been the site of numerous tragic accidents, drownings, car crashes, and lost souls who came to the island never to return. Many believe the spirits of these unfortunate victims never left, still bound to the island's paths and waters. The legend that haunts the island begins with a girl named Elise, whose story has been passed down for generations. In the 1930s, Elise was a teenager from the east side of Detroit, known for her love of nature and music. She would often visit Belle Isle alone, bringing her violin to play by the lakeside. One evening in early spring, she never came home. Her body was found days later, floating in the lagoon near the edge of Blue Heron Lagoon. No one could say how she drowned. There were no signs of struggle, and she was an excellent swimmer. Since then, park rangers and night guards have reported hearing violin music drifting through the trees long after sunset. The notes are soft, melancholic, and always come from near the water. Searchers who follow the music never find anyone playing, just the sound, echoing, then vanishing like mist. But Elise is not the only spirit said to haunt Belle Isle. One chilling tale involves the ghost of a man known only as the Runner. In the 1970s, a local jogger was struck by a speeding car while running one of the island's curved roads. The driver fled the scene, and the man died alone beneath the moonlight, his body found hours later by a fisherman. Ever since, there have been reports of a lone figure running silently at dawn or dusk, always wearing outdated tracksuit clothes. Witnesses claim he's visible for only a few seconds, sometimes passing them without a sound. The oddest part, he casts no shadow. Near the Belle Isle Aquarium, another spirit lingers, that of a young boy who reportedly drowned during a family picnic in the 1950s. Visitors, especially those with children, say they've heard laughter when no one else is around or the sound of small footsteps running through the grass. One mother claimed her toddler was playing by the pond and suddenly turned to her and said, "The boy says he used to live here." But no boy was present. More unsettling are the reports from night security staff who patrol the island after dark. Several guards over the years have quit without giving clear reasons, but those who do speak describe eerie events: headlights flickering, radios playing static that turns into whispers, and sudden cold spots, even during the summer months. One former ranger described seeing a woman in white standing knee-deep in the lake, facing away. When he called out, she turned, and her face was featureless, just a smooth, pale void. Belle Isle's long history is part of what gives its ghost staying power. Once home to Native American tribes, the island was believed to be a sacred place. Some tribes thought the land was protected by spirits of the river. Later, as Detroit industrialized, the island became a public park but continued to see its share of tragedy: murders, drownings, and suicides that stained the soil beneath the green. One particular tree, known quietly among locals as the Hanging Willow, near the center of the island, is avoided by many after dark. Legend says a man took his life there in the 1940s, and ever since, those who walk past at night report hearing a rope creaking in the wind, even on still nights. Then there are the shadows. Many nighttime visitors report seeing figures just at the edge of vision, humanoid forms flitting between trees or watching from the water's edge. Flashlights sometimes flicker when pointed toward them. Phones lose signal near the old Belle Isle Zoo, which has been closed and left to decay for years. Paranormal investigators who visit the zoo ruins have captured unexplained EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, of laughter, faint crying, and in one chilling case, a voice that simply said, "Don't leave me." Despite all this, Belle Isle remains a popular destination during the day. Families picnic, couples stroll, and tourists marvel at the fountains and botanical gardens. But when the sun dips behind the skyline and the river begins to mirror the stars, the island becomes something else: quiet, watchful, and full of memory. Locals say if you ever visit at night, bring something made of iron, an old superstition to ward off spirits. Others leave coins by the water for release. hoping the soft sound of violin strings might bring them peace rather than fear. To this day, the island breathes with unseen life. Perhaps it remembers every footstep, every tear shed, every soul lost along its trails. Belle Isle is not just a park, it's a place of echoes, where the past still walks beside the living. So the next time you cross the bridge to Belle Isle and feel a sudden breeze, a chill in the air, or catch a glimpse of something that shouldn't be there, don't panic. Just listen. The island is speaking. Let's come to part 10 of the story. The haunted house of Kalamazoo. Whispers from the walls. In the quiet town of Kalamazoo, Michigan, tucked behind a row of aged maple trees and ivy-covered fences, stands a Victorian mansion with an unsettling reputation. Once the grand home of the Whitmore family, a wealthy and influential lineage in the early 1900s, the house is now shrouded in silence and shadow. To the untrained eye, it looks like any other preserved piece of local history, but to those who've lived within its walls, or dared to stay overnight, it is a place where the past never truly died. Locals call it the Whitmore House, though no one from the family has lived there in decades. The house has changed hands multiple times, and nearly every owner has reported strange, unexplainable activity, from whispering voices in empty halls to the sounds of weeping that echo through the bedrooms after midnight. The stories have remained chillingly consistent. It all began with the tragedy of the Whitmore family itself. In 1911, Thomas Whitmore, a successful businessman in the railroad industry, built a home for his wife Eliza and their 3 children. The mansion, with its intricate stained glass windows, grand staircase, and 12 rooms, was the crown jewel of Kalamazoo's upper class. But fortune did not shield the Whitmores from suffering. Eliza died suddenly in the winter of 1915, reportedly from pneumonia. Her death devastated the family, especially Thomas, who withdrew from society and rarely left the house. His eldest son, Jonathan, was said to have developed a fascination with spiritualism, holding seances in the parlor in an attempt to contact his mother. Guests at these gatherings claimed to feel cold air sweep through the room, and on more than one occasion, the candles in the room extinguished without explanation. 2 years later, a fire broke out in the nursery on the 3rd floor. The youngest child, Abigail, perished in the flames. Thomas, overcome by grief and guilt, hanged himself from the 2nd floor balcony shortly thereafter. Since then, the mansion has become a cradle of unrest. Tenants who've tried to make the house their home have fled in the middle of the night. One woman, who rented the house in the 1970s, told local reporters that her bed would shake violently at 3 a.m. every night. Her daughter began talking to Abby, an imaginary friend who described the layout of the house's old nursery in perfect detail, despite it having been sealed off for decades. Another family in the 1990s reported finding their belongings rearranged every morning. Chairs would be pulled from the dining table and placed neatly in the hallway. Doors opened and closed by themselves, often slamming with force despite no wind. The father, a skeptic, set up cameras to capture the movement, but every morning, the footage was erased or distorted beyond recognition. More terrifying are the reports of a woman's crying heard from the upstairs master bedroom, the very room where Eliza once slept. The weeping is soft at first, like someone mourning in solitude, but grows louder and more urgent if ignored. One guest described waking to the sound of the sobs, only to find the walls themselves damp with condensation, as if the house were exhaling grief. Investigators from Michigan Paranormal Research Society visited the house in 2006. During their overnight stay, they reported several anomalies: sudden cold spots, flickering lights, and disembodied voices caught on audio recordings. One EVP, played back later, seemed to say, "Where's my baby?" in a woman's voice, barely above a whisper. A second one, more chilling, simply said, "He's still here." In recent years, the house has been unoccupied, save for caretakers and the occasional brave soul who wants to test the legends. But the stories continue. Lights turn on in the middle of the night, even though the power is disconnected. A local delivery driver claims to have seen a man in a suit staring from the 2nd floor window, only to learn later that no one was supposed to be inside. There's a darker theory that haunts the legend, that Jonathan Whitmore, the son who attempted to speak to his mother's spirit, never left the house. Records show he vanished in the early 1920s. No trace of him was ever found. Some believe his obsession with the spirit world led him into something darker, that perhaps he opened a door he couldn't close. Visitors who've stood in the old parlor say the room feels colder than the rest of the house, even during summer. Others swear the mirrors in the hallway reflect more than they should, flashes of faces that aren't your own, or shadows that move just a heartbeat too late. The attic remains the most feared part of the house. One caretaker quit on the spot after venturing up there and hearing what he described as footsteps above the rafters, even though there was nothing above him but roof. He also reported seeing small handprints appear in the dust on an old trunk. Though he was alone, the city of Kalamazoo has considered turning the house into a museum or historical site, but local officials are wary. Some believe the house should remain undisturbed, that whatever lingers within is better left alone. For now, the Whitmore house sits in uneasy silence, its windows dark and its garden overgrown. But when the wind howls just right through Kalamazoo's quiet streets, some say they can hear music playing faintly from within. Eliza's old piano, untouched for over a century, playing a lullaby to the daughter she lost. If you ever find yourself in Kalamazoo and pass by a crumbling Victorian house with ivy twisting around its porch, listen closely. The whispers in the walls are not from the wind. They're waiting,